When my husband, David, passed away, I thought the absolute worst day of my life was already behind me. I was wrong. On the morning of his funeral, while I was sitting in a quiet, empty room trying to put on my black dress through blurred tears, my own mother walked in, wearing a sparkling cocktail dress and high heels. She wasn't attending the memorial. She was heading to a lavish rooftop birthday party across town. As she adjusted her lipstick in my mirror, she looked at my heartbroken reflection and said 4 cold words that I will never forget for the rest of my life. "He's already dead, Chloe." Everyone thought I'd crumble. My lawyer begged me to go quiet. But what my mother didn't realize was that David left behind one final secret, and her precious little party was about to cost her everything. My name is Claire. I'm 28 years old, and for the last 5 years, I thought my family was built on a foundation of mutual support and unconditional love. But the morning of David's funeral, as I stood in front of the mirror clutching my black dress, I realized how dead wrong I was. The morning of David's funeral, the air felt heavy, as if the world itself was mourning the 30-year-old man who had been my entire life. David wasn't just my husband. He was my anchor. When the police knocked on my door 3 days earlier to tell me about the highway accident, my world shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. Sitting at my vanity desk in our home, I stared at my reflection. At 28, I looked entirely hollow, dark circles framing my swollen eyes as I smoothed down the fabric of my black dress. In that suffocating silence, I desperately needed my mother. Evelyn had always been a formidable woman, obsessed with high society, immaculate appearances, and the prestige that came with her social standing. But she was still my mother, and I foolishly believed that tragedy would break through her icy exterior. With trembling hands, I dialed her number, hoping to hear her tell me that everything was going to be okay. But when she answered on the 4th ring, the background wasn't quiet. I heard clinking champagne glasses, loud electronic music, and burst after burst of wealthy, practical laughter. "Mom," I whispered, my voice choking back a sob. "Where are you? The service starts in 2 hours." There was a heavy pause before Evelyn let out a soft, theatrical sigh. "Oh, Claire darling, don't do this right now. You know tonight is the Henderson Annual Coastal Gala. I've had these yacht reservations booked for 6 months." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "David died, Mom. His memorial is today. How can a party possibly matter more than supporting your daughter?" "Darling, let's be reasonable," Evelyn replied, her tone dripping with patronizing calm. "Sitting in a gloomy church weeping won't bring David back. Besides, ruining my image by skipping the biggest event of the season isn't what David would want. Pull yourself together, Claire. You're strong." Before I could even process her words, the line went dead. I sat there in stunned silence, tears finally spilling over my cheeks. But what my mother didn't know was that just 3 weeks before his tragic accident, David had made a very specific, secret adjustment to our financial agreements, one that directly involved her entire lavish lifestyle. The drive to the memorial service felt like floating through a bad dream. The sky was an unforgiving shade of gray, matching the heavy knot sitting in the pit of my stomach. When I walked through the heavy wooden doors of the church, the warmth of the people gathered inside almost brought me to my knees. David's family, his childhood friends, and colleagues from his architecture firm filled the pews, their eyes full of genuine grief and deep respect for the man he had been. As I walked down the aisle alone and took my seat in the front row, I could hear the quiet whispers rippling behind me. People were looking around, their glances lingering on the empty space beside me. My mother's absence was a gaping hole in the room. In our circle, family was everything, and for a mother to abandon her grieving daughter on the worst day of her life was an unspoken scandal. I tried to focus on the soft melody playing from the organ, trying to hold onto the precious memories of David's gentle smile. But during a quiet pause before the eulogy, my phone buzzed in my lap. I tried to ignore it, but the notifications kept coming, rapid and relentless. With trembling fingers, I tapped the screen. It was a social media alert. Evelyn had just uploaded a photo album. In the crisp sunlight of the harbor, my mother was standing on the deck of a multi-million-dollar yacht, holding a glass of vintage champagne and laughing beside her socialite friends. The caption read, "Life is too short to surround yourself with sadness. Living life to the fullest." A wave of nausea washed over me, but as I stared at the high-resolution photo, my grief suddenly sharpened into something else. Wrapped around her wrist was a limited-edition diamond bracelet, a piece of jewelry that David had personally secured and financed through his firm's private accounts just 2 months ago. My mother wasn't just partying while my husband was being buried. She was doing it on his dime. 3 days after the funeral, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my mother standing on the porch, wearing oversized designer sunglasses and holding several high-end shopping bags. She swept past me into the foyer as if nothing had happened, dropping her packages onto the entryway table with a soft sigh of exhaustion. "Darling, traffic from the coast was an absolute nightmare," Evelyn said, sliding her sunglasses up into her perfectly styled hair. She offered me a quick, shallow hug that barely made contact, smelling strongly of expensive perfume and ocean breeze. "I know you're probably still feeling a bit sensitive, but life moves on, Claire. You can't stay wrapped up in black forever." I stood by the open door, watching her with a coldness that surprised even me. "You didn't show up, Mom. You were on a yacht posting photos while I was burying my husband." Evelyn waved her hand dismissively, rolling her eyes as she walked toward the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I sent a lovely arrangement of white lilies to the church, didn't I? People understand that high society commitments can't just be canceled on a whim." She set the glass down, her gentle facade instantly dissolving as her eyes sharpened with businesslike precision. "Now, we need to discuss practical matters. David managed the family trust's commercial property portfolio, didn't he? We need to transfer control of those deeds back to my name immediately before his relatives try to lay claim to them." I stared at her, speechless at the sheer calculated greed in her eyes. Evelyn stepped closer, leaning in with a chilling smirk as she uttered the cold phrase I would never forget. "You're young, Claire. Husbands come and go, but status is forever. Let's make sure we handle his money properly before his family gets greedy." The moment those words left my mother's lips, something inside me clicked into place. The fog of grief that had clouded my mind for days completely lifted, replaced by a razor-sharp clarity. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply nodded, told her I was too tired to discuss paperwork, and watched her drive away in her sports car, completely convinced she had won. The next morning, I drove down to Midtown Sacramento to meet with Sarah Vance, David's trusted estate attorney. Sarah's office was quiet and professional, a sharp contrast to the chaotic web of lies my mother had built around us. "Claire, I'm so sorry for your loss," Sarah said, pulling a thick leather binder from her desk drawer. "David was a brilliant man and he loved you deeply, which is why he took steps to ensure you'd be protected from everyone, including your mother." Over the next hour, Sarah laid out a paper trail that made my blood run cold. For years, Evelyn had been secretly siphoning funds from my personal inheritance accounts to finance her lavish lifestyle. Even worse, she had convinced David to let her take public credit for a highly lucrative commercial property venture his firm had built from scratch. Evelyn had portrayed herself as the mastermind, using David's success to maintain her standing in high society. "David caught on to her transactions 2 months ago," Sarah explained, pushing a signed legal document across the desk. "He didn't confront her immediately because he wanted to give her a chance to do the right thing. But he added a specific, legally binding clause to the estate structure. A moral clause activated under very specific conditions." Sarah looked me dead in the eye. "If Evelyn failed to fulfill her basic family duties, specifically, if she abandoned you during a major life crisis, she forfeited every single claim to the commercial properties and the trust." My mother thought she was fighting for an empire, but David had already laid the trap. For the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the fragile, overwhelmed widow to absolute perfection. Whenever Evelyn called to check on the progress of the property transfers, I kept my voice weak and hesitant. I let her believe that I was breaking under the pressure, that I was far too soft to manage David's vast business empire on my own. She swallowed every bit of it, her tone growing more arrogant and triumphant with each passing day. By the third week, I decided it was time to pull the string on the trap David had set. I phoned my mother and told her I wanted to finalize the transfer of the commercial property portfolio in a way that truly honored our family's high standing. I suggested hosting an exclusive, private dinner at one of Sacramento's most prestigious private dining clubs. I encouraged her to invite her closest, most influential friends, the very socialites whose approval she craved more than her own daughter's love. "Claire, darling, that is a brilliant idea." Evelyn purred through the receiver, practically breathless with excitement. "It will show everyone in our circle that our family is stronger than ever." When the evening arrived, the private dining room was draped in gold and velvet. Evelyn arrived looking like royalty, flanked by 6 of her wealthiest friends, all laughing and sipping vintage wine. She sat at the head of the table, beaming with pride as she bragged about her upcoming expansion into commercial real estate. She thought she was attending her grand crowning ceremony. She had no idea that resting right beside my glass was a heavy, dark red velvet envelope, and that inside it was the complete, undeniable destruction of everything she held dear. As the main course was cleared away, the room fell into a polite, hushed expectancy. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes sparkling with absolute triumph as she looked down the table at her wealthy companions. "Everyone," Evelyn announced, raising her glass with theatrical elegance. "Tonight marks a new chapter for our family. My dear daughter Claire has decided to hand over the primary controlling stakes of our commercial property portfolio to me. A true legacy preserved." Her friends clapped politely, murmurings of congratulations echoing around the room. I didn't smile. I stood up slowly, picked up the heavy, dark red velvet envelope, and walked directly over to her seat. "Here it is, Mom," I said softly, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet dining room. "Everything David prepared for you." Evelyn practically snatched the envelope from my hands, eagerly pulling out the crisp, white papers inside. But as her eyes scanned the top page, her radiant smile slowly froze. The color drained from her face, leaving her ghost white under the dim dining lights. It wasn't a property transfer. It was a complete, certified financial audit from Sarah's office, detailing every single dollar Evelyn had secretly embezzled from my accounts over the last 5 years. Attached to it was a copy of David's finalized trust agreement, specifically highlighting the moral forfeit clause that completely severed her rights to his business assets due to her choice to abandon our family for a party on the day of his funeral. "Claire, what is this?" Evelyn stammered, her voice trembling violently as her socialite friends leaned in, trying to catch a glimpse of the official legal stamps. "It's David's final gift to you," I whispered coldly. "You have 24 hours to sign over all remaining trust access to me, or these audit records go straight to the district attorney. Your status is officially over." The room remained dead silent as I turned and walked out of the dining club, leaving my mother trapped under the shocked, whispering stares of her closest friends. By the very next morning, her high society status was completely in ruins. Faced with the choice between public criminal charges and total surrender, Evelyn signed over every remaining access right to the trust. Within days, the same superficial friends she had chosen over my husband's funeral erased her from their social circles entirely. With the financial chaos finally settled, I sold the commercial properties and used the funds to establish the David Vance Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting young families through sudden, unexpected loss. Honoring David's kindness and protecting his legacy brought a sense of peace that money could never buy. I moved to a quiet coastal town, rebuilding my life step by step, no longer living in anyone's shadow. Grief never truly leaves you, but standing up for myself taught me that I was far stronger than my mother ever gave me credit for. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far David's memory reaches. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Up on your screen right now are 2 channel favorites that will definitely keep you hooked. I'll see you in the next one.